marketing groups typically would continue to buy new applications to try to achieve this concept of personalization. And unless you have a real strong data strategy or an ability to get customer data into those applications when you need it, you're probably going to fall short of some of those personalization goals.
Hey gang, it's Thursday, May 26th. Listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by mParticle. I'm Marcus. Today's fact: why are most aeroplanes white? The main reason why aircrafts are painted white or light colours is to reflect sunlight and minimise both the heating and potential damage from solar radiation, says John Hansman, a professor of aeronautics and astronautics at MIT. It's basically the same as putting sunblock on, he notes. While some airlines like Southwest make use of bright colours, most planes are white. White airplanes also help airlines spend less to cool the cabin and protect parts of the plane that are susceptible to heat damage. Anyway, today's real topic is a conversation between Kyle Robinson, the SVP of Sales at mParticle, and our very own principal analyst, Patty Soltis, who covers customer experience for us. They're going to be talking about what makes a customer data platform successful, what kinds of return on investment brands can expect to see from them, and some best practices. Then I'll be back again in the second half with In Other News.
Hi, Kyle. It's so nice to be here with you today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk about this. There's so much happening in customer experience and with the customer right now, and specifically with what's happening in tech. And there's a lot going on with successfully gathering customer insights. It can be quite a challenge for a lot of organizations. The amount of data can be overwhelming. There's many modes that it can come in. It can get lost in the shuffle of the processes. And what's interesting is most customers are willing to give feedback, but don't necessarily feel like the organization is ready to listen to them. But you guys, with your customer data platforms, I know are doing a lot of different things with it. And I'm sure you hear a lot of different things from customers. But what is that most common thing that you hear? What's that big pain point that you hear from your customers in regard to this?
You know, you alluded to it. There's certainly no shortage of data out there. And there's also no shortage of tools or applications to, help companies engage with their prospects and customers. I think the biggest problem that we help solve and the biggest problem that we get engaged with customers is around helping customers first understand who their customers are and collect that really insightful data from any source or any channel, and then allow customers to really unify that profile and allow them to get that data into the downstream tools they need in real time to drive those really personalized experiences.
That's a big thing to getting into who the customers are, because so many people try to be everything to everybody. And that's a great way to do it. And one of the things I really like about what's happening in the tech world right now is that there's a narrowing down process that's happening inside of that, because there seems to be kind of a feeling out there with particularly people in the C-suite that everybody wants the latest toy. So people will throw a lot of money at technology as far as adding it into their mix and so on and so forth, but they haven't necessarily thought through the strategy of how they're going to integrate it into their systems. And I'm sure you've seen some companies that have done this really well. And I'd love to hear something about an organization that has been successful in this.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've been working in the data and analytics and marketing technology space for about 10 years and have been very lucky to work for some of the most successful independent marketing technology SaaS companies who subsequently were acquired by the marketing cloud or customer experience suites of the big tech companies. And, it's fascinating. I think what I've found over the years is that the strategy really hasn't changed. Everyone is looking to really find ways to engage with their prospects and customers in more personalized ways. And I think the gap has really been in the execution of it. And something that mParticle, and when you look at the DNA of our company and where we've been focused for the last 10 years, it really starts with having a very well thought out data strategy and really laying the foundation with customer data infrastructure, which will then allow you to ensure that you have, high quality customer data that's available in real time and really inform and infuse your downstream applications with the data that it needs to drive that personalization. I think sometimes marketers tend to gravitate towards some of the more advanced use cases too early. And some of those use cases could be like the AI ML story. So trying to provide, the next best action or churn mitigation.
Right. Can you just clarify what AI/ML is?
Yeah, AI ML being artificial intelligence and machine learning. Artificial intelligence is basically using computers to replicate human thought and logic. Machine learning being kind of an offshoot of AI, where you effectively are leveraging algorithms to review historical data, and based on that historical data, coming up with predictions of future outcomes.
That's really cool. And I'm completely fascinated right now by both machine learning and natural language processing and how they're able to even pick like emotion out of conversations. It's so interesting what's going on with that.
It's fascinating, but I think what we see in our world is, there's definite focus and there's, tons of opportunity with those strategies. But if you don't have the right data, and if you don't have that data into the right place in the right system in real time, then we just find that those strategies, subsequently aren't as effective. So we really just try to focus on, being the absolute best from a customer infrastructure point of view, and being able to kind of help companies quickly and easily get that customer data to the places they need to in real time.
And that's a good point about the data piece, because data has become, there's data scientists, data lakes, data governance. There's all these things out there trying to analyze this and put it together. And I have to imagine there's got to be data dams out there now with all the information that's, flowing in. And one of the key findings I found in the Voice of the Customer report that I just did was that this information comes in, but it doesn't really necessarily get to the decision makers. How do you reinforce that so it does get to the decision makers, and where have you seen some best practices with this?
Yeah, it's very challenging, right? And I think something that we see in our world is we almost act as a conduit between engineering business units and marketing and front office decision makers. I think something that gets lost at times in some of these projects is really being able to focus on the business outcomes that matter most for an organization. And we work with all sorts of different industries, but at the end of the day, almost every company we work with, the ultimate goal is to provide a better experience for their customers, or to engage with their customers in a more thoughtful way, to ultimately either drive them to be a new customer or to re-engage them or keep them as an existing customer, and ultimately drive revenue for their business. And so the more that we try to break down those silos between engineering and product and marketing, and really make sure that the use cases that we're driving are aligned with the business outcome that's ultimately most important for that company, those are the conversations and those are the partnerships that we tend to have the most success with.
And I love that you were just talking about what the end result should be with this is for the customer to have the best experience and for it to really drive revenue inside an organization, because those two things can get lost a lot of the times. And for every expense that there needs to be an ROI behind that. So as organizations are adopting these customer data platforms and CDPs, is there a return they should be looking at? Is there a specific way they should measure it? Is there a way that they should be able to justify the expense of it?
Yeah, I think every company is going to be different, and at every level within a company, obviously KPIs play a different role. I tend to think that when I look at CDPs and the market in general, there's a healthy amount of skepticism. And I think this isn't just unique to CDPs. I think marketing technology in general over the years has made pretty large promises and in some cases under-delivered. And so when I look at these types of projects, when done right, they can drive such value for organizations in terms of incremental revenue and reducing costs, that when I think about KPIs, it's really making sure that we're well aligned with the larger goals of the business, and that all of the use cases that we're supporting are ultimately able to be connected to increasing revenue for the organization, or reducing cost, or in some cases reducing risk. The more that we can connect the dots between capabilities or technical requirements within the engineering group and tying those use cases to what the marketing group or what the product group is trying to achieve as far as customer experience, ultimately we find that when we get that alignment cross-functionally, we tend to show our value, and it really reduces, I think, the skepticism around what role is CDP playing in our overall strategy.
That's interesting. And it leads me to think, as an organization, when you're considering adopting a CDP or you're looking at potentially changing it or something along those lines, what are some of the key things that someone should look for when they are considering either a CDP addition or a change?
Yep. And I think this is, an area where we do see some confusion in the market. I think when we talk to customers who maybe don't have a CDP in place or don't understand where it fits in with the architecture, sometimes we ask, are you a CRM system or are you replacing my data warehouse? And my answer is, we're very much a complement to much of the tech stack that you have in place today. One theme that we have at mParticle that really fuels our product and our roadmap is this concept of adaptability. And so every company is going to be different. But when we look at what mParticle does and how CDP fits in with most companies' tech stacks, we're really just providing more of an agnostic data layer across their tech ecosystem. And when I say that, we want to really decouple data from the application layer. And when you do that and you break down those silos, we see that not only will you see more value in the CDP, but you'll also get more value out of your current applications that you have in place today, because the data is what really drives that personalization. I think historically, the marketing groups typically would continue to buy new applications to try to achieve this concept of personalization. And unless you have a real strong data strategy or an ability to get customer data into those applications when you need it, you're probably going to fall short of some of those personalization goals.
Yeah, and that's kind of a buzzword out there right now, personalization. We just keep hearing it over and over and over again. And it's funny because most customers think that companies miss the mark on it. But the other thing is, a lot of companies miss the mark on actually how to do a CDP and do it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think it really does start with having the data strategy and having a real fundamental understanding of where your customers are, where their data resides, and then what is the experience that you're trying to design. I think something that we see a lot in the market is just a elevated expectation of what the experience should be without a really sound data strategy. And so something that we really try to do, and I alluded to it before, is kind of break down those silos between the engineering groups and then the customer experience or marketing groups.
Yeah, those the silos can be something that's really tricky to navigate through, and it kind of funnels. Everybody has what they are responsible for, and getting past them can be tough.
100%. Yeah. And, also, the success of these projects isn't just software or just technology. Very much people and process contribute to the success of these projects. And so it's typically a fundamental shift and breaking down of silos beyond just the technology.
Yeah, and it's the piece that a lot of people miss, is the cultural shift that needs to come with this. It's not just, there's a lot of change management that needs to happen in conjunction to adopting different technologies.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's something that, we focus heavily on, is not just the scoping of technology or the applications that you have in place, but really trying to be an extension of the team, and in the true sense of the word partnership, really make the strategic guidance and recommendations to ultimately make these projects successful.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I interviewed someone recently and they told me that the people in their organization were just so afraid of feedback.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very complicated project, and politics and who owns the data and what's the best recommendation for your data strategy. There's a lot of complexity that comes with it. At the end of the day, we try to just focus on time to value and focus on, for every customer, what's the ultimate goal for the business and what are some of those business outcomes that you're trying to drive, and working backwards from there to try to put in place a plan that ultimately makes everybody successful and allows the company to meet their growth goals.
Kyle, I think that was just the perfect way to wrap everything up that we've been talking about today. And I want to thank you so much for coming and talking with me about customer data platforms and all the data pieces that come with it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Patty.
All right, folks, time for In Other News. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, mParticle. At the end of the day, your customer has to be at the center of everything you do. This starts with the right customer data strategy as well as the right foundation to solve the challenges that typically inhibit success, such as data quality, data governance, and connectivity. mParticle is your real-time customer data infrastructure that helps you accelerate your data strategy by cleansing, visualizing, and integrating your customer data from anywhere to anywhere. Ultimately, better data leads to better decisions, better customer experiences, and better outcomes. See why the best brands choose mParticle. Go to www.mparticle.com. All right, folks, we are back and we're joined in the second half by Patty, who's sticking around with us. Patty, thank you so much for hanging out.
Glad to be here.
Cool. Today, in other news, are you tracking the right customer service metrics? And what happened when Old Navy made clothing sizes for everyone? Story 1. Are you tracking the right customer service metrics that really count? Asks senior lecturer at MIT, Jonathan Brines, and Oxford University professor John Wass in a recent Harvard Business Review piece. They argue that the biggest customer service issue is that managers focus almost exclusively on the day-to-day tactical customer issues and fail to develop the strategic customer service opportunities that lock in and grow their most important customers. They note that customers' perceptions of service are strongly determined by their worst experiences, not the average. They recommend testbed projects to improve customer service, making incremental changes and involving key stakeholders as you go. But Patty, for you, the biggest takeaway from this piece was blank.
The biggest takeaway from this piece for me was that the customer needs to come first.
Yep, tell me why.
So what happens in a lot of organizations is they start thinking about the company first, and they'll go into things and say things to customers like, our policy is this. The right policy should be the one that's going to most benefit the customers. And most customers are sitting there thinking, you know what, I don't give a whoop what your policy is. All they really care is, are you going to help me solve my problem? And there's a lot of good examples of this over time. I mean, I have a certain airline that I refused to fly because of $35. And they lost thousands of dollars in revenue from me because they wanted to charge me $35.
That's all it takes. Yep. Story 2. What happened when Old Navy made clothing sizes for everyone? It backfired, writes Suzanne Kapner of the Wall Street Journal. She notes that Old Navy had tried to make clothes shopping more inclusive for women of all body types, but ended up with too many extra small and extra large items and too few of the rest. This frustrated customers, she notes, and led to falling sales in Q3 and Q4 of last year and a management change. But Patty, for you, the biggest lesson here from Old Navy was blank.
The biggest lesson here from Old Navy was not to take processes and tech over people. What they missed when they did this experiment is they missed getting the voice of the customer and getting the voice of the employee into place. They pulled data on sizing, scanning bodies, creating avatars, fit block, pocket placements, all of these things, but the customer still couldn't find her size. And they stopped talking to the customer to get feedback from the customer on what the customer actually wanted. The other thing they missed was getting that voice of the employee and finding out from the employee, what's the customer actually doing? And the employee can see how the customer shops. They can see what she's looking at. They can see what she tries on, what she rejects, and what she finally buys. And there's something called an opportunity here. And there's opportunity sales that come out of this when you get that voice of the employee and they give you that information.
Yeah. This is a big deal as well. The article notes that Old Navy's stumbles don't bode well for Gap Inc., its parent company. Last year, Old Navy accounted for just over half of the company's sales and roughly 80% of the profits. That is all we've got time for. Thank you so much to my guests for this episode. Thank you to Patty.
Thank you. It was so fun to do this.
Yes, miss. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you to Kyle, who joined us in the first half. Thank you to Victoria. She edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening in. We'll see you tomorrow for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, an eMarketer podcast made possible by mParticle.